Am I the a-hole for telling my husband that I see him as a liability and not a partner? Sorry for the long post. It's 2 a.m. and I'm crying and tired and worn out. If I'm rambling, it's because I've held this in for so long, not wanting to burden friends or family with my marital troubles. I feel like I'm at a breaking point where the walls of the house I built to be my sanctuary are closing in on me, and the person who is supposed to be guarding the door is the one leaving it wide open. I, 34F, have been with my husband, 37M, we'll call him Nathan, for 8 years. For the first 5 years, things were genuinely good. We were a team. But ever since our daughter, 3F, was born, it's like the man I married vanished and was replaced by a stranger who lacks a basic survival instinct. I have reached a point where I am unable to trust Nathan with anything, no matter how small, and the mental load is physically crushing me. Some necessary background context. When I was 19, my life changed in an instant. A semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and turned my car into scrap metal with me still inside it. I shouldn't have survived. I have enough metal holding my skeleton together that I light up like a Christmas tree for TSA, and I live with significant physical impairment. I have good days where I can move relatively well, and bad days where the pain is a localized storm. I was smart with my settlement check. I bought our house outright and had it custom retrofitted to accommodate my needs, knowing that I will eventually require a full-time wheelchair. I work in software development, a career I chose because it's intellectually stimulating and, crucially, nobody cares if I work from bed on the days my legs won't support me. Nathan has not worked in 5 years. Initially, this was a joint decision. Between my settlement, the lack of a mortgage, and my high salary, we were comfortable. I enjoyed having him home. He handled the domestics, and since we pay for a weekly cleaner and a monthly deep clean service, it meant we had more quality time together. He was my rock. Then we had our daughter, and it was like a light switch turned off in his head. The accidents started small, but they were constant. For our daughter, he would consistently buy the wrong size diapers, leading to leaks I'd have to clean up while dragging my leg. He wouldn't fully mix her formula, leaving clumps of powder that clogged the nipples and left her hungry. He'd put her diapers on backwards. He'd leave poop-covered wipes sitting on the changing table or the floor. He'd forget to latch the safety cabinets I had installed specifically because I can't chase a toddler. Just this past week, he went to the store 3 separate times because he kept coming home with the wrong size socks and shoes for her. I finally just gave up and ordered them on Amazon. But it isn't just the baby, it's me. He helps me with my weekly pill organizer, a task that is vital for my health. Several times, he has spilled the contents of new medication bottles all over the floor, expensive, necessary pills, and then claimed he didn't see that he hadn't picked them all up. I've found stray pills under the counter days later that our daughter could have easily swallowed. He has repeatedly brought me grapefruit juice to take my meds with, which is a huge medical no-go for my specific prescriptions. He knows I am strictly dairy-free for health reasons, yet he still puts milk in my coffee or cheese on my burgers. He breaks my things constantly because he's just being quick. He shattered my laptop because it slipped out of his hand when he insisted on packing it for a trip, even after I told him I wanted to handle my own electronics. We've lost so many spoons and forks to the garbage disposal because he just sweeps them in with the scraps. Then there was the car. He tried to replace the head gasket in my vehicle and somehow over-torqued the engine bolt. It shattered inside the block. 2 different shops told me it was unrepairable. We had to buy a new vehicle because a replacement engine was quoted at $11,000. A week after we got the new car, he crashed it into the garage door. His excuse? He thought he'd press the brake, but he hit the accelerator. Lately, he's wanted to do TikToks and streaming as a hobby. I supported him at first. I wanted him to have an outlet. But a pattern emerged that I couldn't ignore. He never whoopsed his own stuff. He could build elaborate, perfect sets for his videos. He could spend hours focused on his streaming equipment. But the second he stepped out of the garage to be a father or a husband, his brain stayed in the garage. It all came to a head 4 nights ago. Nathan had been streaming for 9 hours straight, building a new set piece. Meanwhile, I worked my full shift, clocked out early to pick up our daughter from summer camp, cooked dinner, fed us both, and got her through the bath and bedtime routine. He finally came out to help tuck her in. I told him I was exhausted but had to finish some high-priority code in my office. I asked him for one thing. Please take the trash out. He said he would. 2 hours later, I finished my work and stepped out of the office. The house felt strangely warm. I walked into the living room and realized the front door was standing partially open. Not just unlocked, swung wide to the night air. Nathan had taken the trash out, walked back in, and just forgot to close it. He was back in the garage with his game volume cranked so loud he couldn't hear the world. I panicked. Our daughter is at the age where she can get out of bed. She could have toddled right out onto the street while her father was killing virtual monsters 10 feet away. Thankfully, she was still asleep. Then I smelled something. I walked into the kitchen and saw a stovetop burner was on. There was a small pot sitting on the flame with absolutely nothing inside it. I hadn't used the stove all night. I went to the garage and popped my head in. "Hey, I need you for a minute," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I told him about the door. "I thought I locked it," he said casually. We checked the camera. He hadn't even pulled it shut. Then I asked about the burner. He said he was planning to make ramen and forgot. He walked into the kitchen, pulled the scorching hot pot off the burner, and, without thinking, put it straight into the sink on top of our daughter's favorite plastic plate. I watched in slow motion as the plastic began to melt and fuse to the metal. I'll admit, I lost it. I screamed, "What are you doing?" He realized the mistake and yanked the pot off the ruined plate and set it directly onto the laminate countertop. I had to grab it and run it under cold water to keep it from burning a hole in the kitchen. I was shaking. I told him, "I can't tonight. I can't deal with you. I'm taking my meds and going to sleep." As I was reaching for my water, he grabbed a plastic cup from the cupboard and set it down, straight onto the burner that was still glowing red. I hit my limit. I started sobbing. The weight of 3 years of accidents just crashed down on me. He kept saying it was fine, that things happen, that it's just an accident. He told me he'd had a rough day from the stress of streaming, and he was just tired. He asked why I was crying over a cup. "We can replace it," he said, like money fixes the fact that he almost burned our house down. The anger hit me like a physical force. I looked at him and said, "It's because I have a liability and not a partner." He snapped back, "What the fuck does that mean?" I screamed. I told him it's because I can't trust him to do anything. I told him I'm always having to watch him like a child. I told him I'm the one who always bears the emotional and financial costs of his mistakes. I told him that every time I let my guard down and think I can trust him to be an adult, I'm the one who gets fucked over. I looked him in the eye and said, "I can't see you as a partner anymore. You're just another liability in my checkbook." He didn't say a word. He just stormed out of the kitchen and went to bed. I called my mom, crying hysterically. She thinks I'm just stressed. She offered to take our daughter for a week so we could figure this out in peace. But she also told me it was an asshole thing to call my husband a liability. She thinks I'm being too hard on him. In the morning, the silence was deafening. I told Nathan that my mom was picking our daughter up from camp and keeping her for a week. He just said, "Okay." That is the only interaction we have had in days. He spends 24 hours a day in that garage. He's playing games, making TikToks, and streaming to his fans. He's ordering DoorDash and having the drivers leave the food at the garage door so he doesn't have to walk through the house. He refuses to be in the same room as me. I've messaged him, asking to talk or find a solution, but he leaves me on read. If I try to go into the garage, he ignores my physical presence entirely. He'll actually apologize to his viewers for the interruption and then mute his mic until I leave. Before this blow-up, I tried everything. I've asked if he was depressed. I've tried to be gentle when he screws up because I don't want our daughter to grow up in a house where mistakes equal screaming. I asked him to see a doctor to see if there was a neurological issue or ADHD. He always waved me off, saying I was overreacting and that people make mistakes. He doesn't see the issue, even when the mistakes cost us thousands of dollars or jeopardize our safety. He just says, "It's not like we can't afford it." I love him dearly. I really do. But I miss the man he was before. The man I married was someone I could lean on. Now, I feel like I'm leaning on a broken crutch that's waiting to snap and send me hitting the floor. Did I screw this up forever? Was I being too harsh? Am I missing something here? Am I the asshole? Update. Sorry for not being so responsive. Thank you to everyone who gave feedback, suggestions, and all of the messages. It's been a week. Before I get into the update, I'm going to answer some repeated questions. 1. Why does my husband not work? He can easily find employment, but we both agreed that the pay was never worth the toxic environment of his field unless he wanted to start his own business, which he did not. He worked in home repair and renovation. It was gross how his coworkers spoke of and treated women, female customers and coworkers alike. He saw many female coworkers be sexually harassed into quitting. He hated how gross it made him feel when sales and adjusters would take advantage of women. Yes, selling inferior and unnecessary services at a premium is a thing. If he said anything, his hours would get cut until he left. He left one job on the first day because his boss left a screaming voicemail for not selling a refrigerant service to a young black couple who didn't even need refrigerant. Yes, he's got documentation and reported multiple employers to the state labor board and checked back. Nothing was ever done, to our knowledge. He's also tried a factory job and a warehouse since leaving the trades. Both heavily penalized him for needing scheduled time off for my medical needs. There's no worker protection here for any of that until FMLA, which is unpaid and takes a year to be eligible for. Yes, it is a privilege to walk away from a paying job with your middle fingers held high. I have done the same many times, but I'm happy where I'm at right now because it's the opposite of toxic. I'm thriving, and our company has a no-penalty, unlimited paid sick and medical leave policy that is strictly enforced at all levels of management. Any lead who penalizes people for taking leave gets sacked. A unicorn of a company. Add in a child, and short of finding another unicorn employer who won't penalize him for needing time off for me or our daughter, such as when daycare closed for a week due to an RSV outbreak, it puts him out of the workforce until either I stop working or our child is old enough to not need consistent monitoring. The last reason for this dynamic is that although I'm disabled, my job pays almost double the highest salary he's ever had, with no reduction in pay for needing time off. It doesn't make financial sense for us to switch who the working partner is. 2. Does my husband have a large following or make money from streaming or TikTok?
No.
His lives have an average of 6 viewers, and his Twitch has 3 followers. When we did our taxes, he didn't get a 1099, and he showed me that he got all of $6 from TikTok live gifts. Nothing from Twitch. His viewer counts are about the same as the end of last year. 3. Why do we still have a weekly housekeeper and have our daughter in summer camp and part-time daycare? I hate the dynamic of one spouse working a single job for 40 hours a week while the other juggles simultaneous domestic duties, child rearing, care, enrichment, socialization, and essentially being on call 24/7. I would not want those expectations of me and couldn't fathom putting all of it on someone I love and cherish. If my husband did all of the activities and field trips that daycare did, his evenings and weekends would be taken up by domestic duties that I would physically struggle with assisting. The weekly housekeeper helps prevent deferred cleaning paralysis, where small missed things pile up into unwieldy monster tasks and struggling with where to start. The monthly deep clean and organization has been a world of self-care as we navigated having an infant and the transition from infant to toddler. Edited to add, our daughter started at the part-time daycare when she turned 3. Before then, my partner was the primary caretaker, which made the weekly housekeeping that much more helpful in not letting things fall into disarray. 4. The allowance thing. Yes, I wanted a dynamic where my husband had his own money, even if he was not working a paying job. Maybe I've been on social media too long, but I've read so many stories of non-working spouses, albeit mostly women, being financially abused or unable to leave marriages because they did not have access to money they could save up in private. Should I have stopped it sooner when our dynamic became too unbalanced? Yes, I own that. 5. As for what happens if or when we divorce, the house and settlement balance is in a trust completely separated and, as far as my lawyer can tell, out of his reach. Alimony would be up for a judge to decide, but between my documentation, that is licenses and certifications aren't expired, plus my continual medical costs, there's a good chance of not being obligated. Hopefully that answers most or all of the background-related questions. On to the update. Friday, I finished work to the smell of food being cooked. My husband was plating dinner on the table when I left my office. He said he wanted to talk over dinner. Some people had given me a heads up that my story was on multiple TikToks, and I'm grateful because it meant being prepared for the possibility he would see it. Which I have feelings about my post being used for content on the very platform my child and I have been neglected for. Not good ones. He did see one. He asked if it was me, and I told him the truth. Yes, I wrote it. Yes, that's how I feel. And yes, I read the comments on Reddit. And no, I won't delete or change how I write about him just because I know he can see it. I don't know how to describe his reaction, but he said he'd spent the last day reflecting on just how bad it could be for so many medical diagnosis suggestions to be given as reason and justification. He did say that he's not ADHD. His mom was addicted to opioids and Ritalin when he was a kid, and she tried to get numerous doctors to have him diagnosed with ADHD. She had him believing he was, so he also sought out 2 opinions once he was an adult. He didn't learn about her addiction until his mid-20s. He did seek therapy once he was aware that his mom was trying to use him for pills. He said he was willing to see a psychiatrist one more time, but he doesn't think he's ADHD or autistic at all. He does think he might be depressed, though. If not depressed, he will ask about some of the other medical suggestions if it will ease my worry or rule out a major problem. He did sound genuine in this, but something he said is sticking with me. He said it jokingly and apologized as soon as he saw the hurt in my eyes, that everyone saying there's something wrong in his brain must be onto something since he chose to love and marry someone medically fragile, knowing our life together would be anything but normal. He did also admit that the night he'd left the door open, the pot on, ruined our child's favorite dish and a cup, he drunk a little too much on his stream and would monitor that more closely. He said the last few nights he had been filling his wine bottle with grape juice so it looked like he was a jolly drinking Viking, but was actually sober. He said he would keep doing that. After dinner, we went out, and he surprised me with seeing the new Deadpool movie. We didn't go to our normal theater because he looked up what each theater had for limited edition popcorn buckets. I now have the baby Deadpool one that holds popcorn and a drink. We spent the next day going over the extent of how our family dynamic changed for the worse, how the little things have added up, and how I see change as a part of an apology. If you verbally apologize but repeatedly do the same thing, the apology words are worthless to me. And that he didn't recognize just how frequently he was making the same or similar mistakes. Sunday, we spent talking over short and long term, what needs to change immediately, him scheduling his own doctor appointments, and timelines for expectations. He agreed that replacing or fixing things he caused will no longer come out of our expense account. He will pay for it from his allowance account. We talked about that, and I did turn deposits back on, but only for $50 per paycheck. He suggested we keep it that way until he's paid back the cost of repairing the garage and car from earlier this year. He said it will take him far longer to undo the cost of destroying the engine in my last vehicle, but that he's going to step up and find ways to make it right, just so I know. Yes, I see the red flags. Love bombing, not knowing how frequently despite repeated talks, thinking verbal apologies are the final step in apologizing and not understanding that repeatedly doing the same problem is the same as never apologizing. And yes, I know he will read this. Do I actually think this is resolved, and we will come out of this as a perfect married couple who stays together until one of us croaks? Not really full offense to my husband for now. Is it a potential resolution? Maybe. But my husband is fully aware that he has a lot to make up for, a lot to fix, and a tight schedule to make it happen. And that the lesson for our daughter later in life is either going to be taking real accountability can steer a wayward ship back to course, taking accountability is the right thing to do even if you don't get the result you wanted, or love alone isn't enough. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update.